Last year around this time, a man was sitting on an airplane, sitting in business class, getting ready to eat his lunch, when something landed in his hair. And so he raised his arm and started messing with his hair a little bit to see what was inside of there. And when he did that, the scorpion that had fallen onto his head from the luggage bin fell out onto his lunch plate. And when he tried to shoo it away, it ended up stinging him. But don't worry, the flight attendants, they jumped into action and they captured the scorpion really quickly, and then they flushed it down the toilet, which on an airplane means that it's still on the airplane. They didn't really get rid of it. But that airline, I think, lost a few customers after that incident, because who would want to hop on an airplane thinking that they might be stung by a scorpion? How many of you would want that? Probably not many. Yeah, I think there may be one situation in which every one of us would choose that option as opposed to the other one. Which sting would you rather feel? Would you rather sit on an airplane and feel the sting of a scorpion? Or would you rather feel the sting of someone's death? Some of you know the answer to that pretty clearly, because some of you have been stung by death pretty recently. For others, it's been a while since your loved one died, but your heart doesn't hurt any less since that happened. And for others, the pain is kind of sporadic. You can cover over it pretty well when you can distract yourself with hobbies and with work or with hanging out with friends or with children. But then at times you find yourself in a particular place or catching a familiar scent, and it's a reminder just of how painful the sting of death really is. It's a pain that affects every age of every race. It's a pain that can come suddenly and unexpectedly, or it can come gradually over time through many months or years of sickness and waiting. But it's a pain that we get to face head on Easter morning. Jesus died too. His family and friends felt the sting of death very powerfully. And yet on the third day, the Jesus who had died was very much alive and out of the grave. Jesus had been stung by death, but not defeated by it. And that's why the Apostle Paul, he writes this. He says, "Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting?" He's taunting death, reminding us that death doesn't get the final say in the life of the Christian. Jesus does. Who in the Bible do you think was happiest that Jesus had risen? Or maybe to ask it another way, who do you think was most sad before he did? I mean, you have lots of options. Think of all the people who lost their joy between just the Thursday before Jesus died, the day before Jesus died, and Easter morning. You could think of Peter, who went out and wept bitterly over his sins. You can think of Mary Magdalene soaking Jesus' tomb with her tears, so blinded by grief that she couldn't even recognize Jesus when Jesus was standing right there next to her in the garden. You might even think of Jesus himself, stumbling under the weight of his cross as those women in Jerusalem were weeping over him. And there are so many more examples of people who had lost their joy as we're leading up to Easter. And as you consider all of these, and there are many, do you ever wonder why God includes all of these stories of personal pain? I think I can think of at least one reason. I think one of the reasons that God includes all these stories of personal pain is because he wants you to be able to find yourself in his word. No matter what day it is, no matter what you're feeling, he wants you to find someone that you can relate to, someone whose pain you are also feeling. And I want you to think about what it might mean if you can look in the Bible and find somebody who can relate to what you're feeling. Do you know what that means? It means that God knew what you would be going through. He knew what you would be going through. It means that he knew that some days you would feel like Peter, feeling really guilty about something. He knew that you would have days in which you would feel like Mary, filled with so much grief that you're blinded to the reality that's right in front of you. He even knew that you would have days in which you feel like Jesus, burdened down with a heavy weight of responsibility. He knew what you would be going through. It might be a surprise to you, but it's not a surprise to him. And in the middle of whatever it is you happen to be feeling, he wanted to give you a reason to believe that you're going to be okay. And the Gospel of John does that really well. The Gospel of John, after sharing all of these examples of the disciples being filled with grief and then sharing with us the reality of Jesus' resurrection, John sums it all up by saying this. He reminds us why God wants us to see all these things. He says, "But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing, you may have life in his name. I'm going to read some words that Jesus spoke on Maundy Thursday, the day before he was crucified, and I want you to identify the phrase that comes up most often in this section. I'm going to warn you it's just a little bit longer, but see if you can identify which phrase comes up in this section more often than any other. Are you ready? In a little while, you will see me no more. And then after a little while, you will see me. Some of his disciples said to one another, what does he mean by saying, in a little while you will see me no more, and then after a little while you will see me? And because I am going to the Father, they kept asking, what does he mean by a little while? We don't understand what he is saying. Jesus saw that they wanted to ask him about this, so he said to them, are you asking one another what I meant when I said, in a little while you will see me no more, and then after a little while you will see me? I tell you the truth, you will weep and mourn, while the world rejoices. You will grieve, but your grief will turn to joy. A woman giving birth to a child has pain because her time has come. But when the baby is born, she forgets the anguish because of her joy that a child is born into the world. And so with you. Now is your time of grief, but I will see you again, and you will rejoice, and no one will take away your joy. Did you notice what phrase came up 7 times in that section? It's the phrase, a little while. A little while. Jesus knew that his disciples would suffer for a little while, but he wanted them to know that it wasn't going to last forever. Now, sometimes when people say the phrase a little while, they are trying to brush somebody off. For example, like when a family is on their family trip and dad's driving the car and the kid asks 8 times in the first 5 minutes when we're going to get there, dad says, we'll get there in a little while, because he knows that if he tells him the truth, the kid will get really discouraged and start complaining. But that's not what Jesus means when he says a little while. When he said this to his disciples, he knew that the disciples would run away from him that night in the garden. He knew that most of the disciples would be too sad or scared or ashamed to show up at his crucifixion. He knew that. And yet he also knew that just 96 hours after this conversation, Jesus would be standing in front of his disciples, fully alive, even after he had died, in the upper room that the disciples had locked themselves into. He knew that their little while really would last just a little while. He knew when it would end. And he knows that about yours too. He knows how long you'll suffer. He knows how long you're going to be in pain. He knows how long you'll grieve. He knows exactly how long before you'll get to see your loved one again in heaven. He knows exactly how long before you'll step into the only place where there is no more death or crying or pain, and where every last tear is wiped away. He knows. It's why he came. He came to live, to die, and to rise, because he wanted you to know that all of your waiting through the little whiles of life will be worth it. Have you ever been in a situation where it looks like nothing good could possibly happen? A woman named Tracy was swimming with her 5-year-old daughter, Allison. They have a pool in their backyard. And one day when they were swimming, Tracy was in the deep end when she started having a seizure. Her body was shaking violently, and it basically knocked her out cold as her head was face down in the water. And her only hope for help was her 5-year-old daughter, Allison, who couldn't really swim. It's not the kind of situation that fills you with a lot of hope that something good could happen. And that's the kind of situation that the women coming to the tomb of Jesus were in on Easter morning. The Gospel of Luke tells us about that, where it says, on the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and they went to the tomb. You could tell these women had come to the tomb hurting. You could tell that by what they were carrying. They were carrying burial spices, and the only reason somebody would carry burial spices, of course, is if you intend to use them. They came to the tomb expecting that they were not going to find a body that was living, but a body that was dead. They came to the tomb not expecting to see anything good happen. Kind of like when you see a mom suffering a seizure in the deep end of a pool, and your only hope for help is your 5-year-old daughter who can barely swim. Well, little Allison decided to jump into the deep end anyway because she saw her mom was hurting. And after many attempts, she was able to finally pull her mom's body into the shallow end and turn her over and lift her head above the water for long enough that she was able to run inside of the house, get a hold of her aunt, who was able to help out, call 911, and get them help. Amazingly, Mom was just fine. She fully recovered. The doctor said it was a miracle. something you don't expect to see very often, something good that you don't expect to see. It's an illustration of the truth that just because you can't see how something's going to happen doesn't mean that it can't. The truth that just because you can't see a way out of your pain doesn't mean that that way isn't coming. Easter morning, in fact, is God's declaration to you that one day you will see a way out of all of your pain. If Jesus really did beat death, if he really does forgive every sin, if he really did crush the head of Satan, then you have the right to know that one day your eyes will see the glory and perfection of heaven, no matter how impossible that sight ever happens to seem in the moment. A number of years ago, a man named Joey died of brain cancer. It attacked so quickly and so aggressively that he never got the opportunity to say goodbye to his son, Rowan. Though he had promised to when the cancer began. He said, "I'll be sure to say goodbye before this kills me." But he never did, and that had a major impact on Rowan. 6 years before Joey had died, he had been traveling a lot on work trips. And his son Rowan didn't like that his father was going to be gone so much, so on one particular trip, Joey told his son Rowan that he would send him postcards from every state that he would travel in. And so over the next couple of weeks, Joey ended up sending 4 postcards that came through the mail, and Rowan received them. 8 years later, so 2 years after Joey died, Rowan received 1 more postcard from that trip. On the day before the two-year anniversary of Joey's death, Joey's wife went out to the mailbox, got the mail, and in the mail was a postcard addressed to Rowan. And the postcard said, "Hello from Pennsylvania. I love you and I miss you so much. I can't wait to see you. Love, Daddy." It was a postcard that he had written 8 years earlier. Nobody knows why it took 8 years for the post office to deliver the postcard, but Rowan didn't care. All he cared about was the fact that, in his mind, Daddy finally said goodbye. Just like he said he would. Just like he said he would. That's similar to what the angel told the women who were crying at the tomb on Easter morning. They came to the tomb not expecting to see anything good. And the angel didn't direct them to see anything different. The angel directed them not to what they were seeing with their eyes, but to something that they had heard with their ears, to things that Jesus had said. The angel said this to them. He said, "Remember what he told you while he was still in Galilee." And then the angel reminded them of 3 particular things that Jesus had said to them while he was in Galilee. That Jesus had said that he would be handed over, that he said that he would be crucified, and that he said that he would rise again. And I'm sure there was a time where they didn't think that any of these things would ever need to happen, but I want you to think about what would have happened as they would have gone through that 3-part checklist and evaluated just what had happened with them. Jesus said that he was going to be handed over, and they saw that happen. Jesus said that he was going to be crucified, and they saw that happen. Jesus said that he was going to rise again. And then they began to wonder if hearts that one moment had been so filled with grief could in the next moment be so full of something entirely different. And that's when the women went off to tell the disciples that Jesus had risen, but not because they saw him. Nowhere in Luke 24 do the women ever see Jesus with their eyes. What made the difference for them was that the angel reminded them of the promise. The promise is what made the difference. Which promise do you think the angel would remind you of today, if the angel were sitting with you? Didn't he say that your sins are forgiven? Didn't he say to give all of your burdens to him when you feel weak and heavy laden? Didn't he say that he's with you always to the very end? Didn't he say that in his Father's house are many rooms and he's going there to prepare a place for you? Didn't he say that he searches for you like a good shepherd searches for just one little fragile sheep that's gone missing? Didn't he say that there is nothing in all creation that can separate you from him? Didn't he say to his disciples that they would see him again? He did. And then they did. They saw him again. And one day we will see too. But until that day, the very best thing you can do is open his word and listen.